Hi, my name is Avery Forsyth. I am 18 years old, and I am here to tell you about my experience in the April 25th, 2015 Nepal earthquake. In the summer of 2014, I decided to do my junior year online and travel around the world.
I went to 11 countries over the course of 6 months, but the most transformative and life-changing was Nepal. My dad is a medical guide for the Tusker Trekking Company. He, one other guide, and many Sherpas took 12 clients from Kathmandu through the Khumbu Valley to Everest Base Camp, and I had the opportunity to go with them.
After a summer of working 2 jobs, I had saved up enough money to pay my way to Nepal.
The moment I got to Kathmandu, I knew I had found my place. I loved the beautiful people, culture, and nature. I connected with everything about the country immediately. After 2.5 amazing weeks of trekking through the Khumbu Valley, I woke up on April 25th like it was any other morning. I was told we would be starting a little later than normal because of some water contamination issues. A long and tiring hike later, we arrived at Gorakshep, a couple hours late. I went to my room and began to repack my bags for the last leg of our journey, the trek to Everest Base Camp. Then, the earthquake hit.
Hey!
What do you think of your first earthquake in Nepal?
Holy shit.
Wow.
It shake, the whole room was shaking.
Yeah, I thought people above us were running at first.
That was pretty.
Still moving.
Still moving.
The ground rolled beneath my feet as I ran outside to find my dad. Only seconds after finding him, a second disaster struck. I looked up as a giant wall of white came towards us. At first, we thought it was just another avalanche that wasn't going to get anywhere near us, but slowly we realized that it was coming right at us and it was going to hit us. We ran back inside, and out of the window we saw the massive white wall engulfing buildings, animals, and people, and everything else in its path. The double avalanches that had come off of Nuptse and Pumori, sub-peaks of Everest, were so large they created a powder cloud that reached all the way to our village, many miles away. At that time, we had no idea what had truly just happened, but as information trickled in, we found out that there were 19 dead and at least 40 injured at base camp. And that didn't even begin to cover the devastation. The epicenter of the earthquake was close to Longmjung, northwest of Kathmandu. It had devastated the capital city and many other parts of Nepal, with 8,857 deaths total and 8,964 injuries. We were the lucky ones. Everest Base Camp had been hit with much more force from the avalanche, and the people had been worked by the powder cloud, being crashed into rocks, pushed into the ground, and thrown off ledges. That night, the walking wounded flooded into our lodge. My dad, being a paramedic, helped the best he could, cleaning wounds, setting broken bones, and assessing injuries.
After the initial sense of relief, we took stock a little bit, made sure that we had everybody, that nobody was hurt. Looked around, and it wasn't long before people started coming in from the trail who had been a lot more exposed than we when the powder cloud hit. And then after that, folks that had actually been in base camp. First patient I saw was a man who was up there filming a documentary who had been knocked off his feet and blown face first into a rock wall, breaking his nose and possibly his cheekbone as well. He had no idea where anybody else in his group was or if anybody had survived. He had a hard enough time getting himself down to base camp. The first sense of the tragedy was from a Sherpa guide that I was helping. They had some people in their party that were missing and one known dead. That was kind of the first that I realized that people had lost their lives up there. Good people, climbers, Sherpas, people up there making a living, people trying to support a family. We were happy to be able to help as much as we could, but it felt like there's so much more to do.
Over the next 5 days, we trekked down valley past countless falling buildings, devastated families, and broken livelihoods. People were sleeping in tents or with only tarps to cover them, too scared to go back in their house for fear that an aftershock would collapse their home even more. On the morning of the 30th, we woke up at 4 o'clock and trekked many miles to a helicopter landing pad. After waiting for about 4 hours for the weather to clear, a massive industrial helicopter landed on the helipad. We all piled in, hoping the weather would stay clear until we arrived in Kathmandu. A couple hours later, we landed on Kathmandu's helipad. As we got out, we were swarmed with reporters telling us that we were the first Americans to make it out of the devastated valley. They bombarded me with questions, asking what it was like to experience all of this so young, and wanted to know how I was doing. I refused their questions, imploring them to focus on the true victims of this tragedy. After repacking our bags on the dirty floor of the packed airport, we waited in line for what felt like forever. The gates were extraordinarily crowded with people waiting for planes, delayed up to 7 hours. Luckily, our plane was one of the few that actually took off relatively on time. We got out of Nepal because we were the rich white Americans, and I hated it. All I could think about was the people who couldn't escape, the people who couldn't afford to be evacuated, the people who lived there and didn't have anywhere to go, the people whose houses had been destroyed and families killed, the people who were sleeping under tarps and didn't have enough money to rebuild their lives.
In February 2016, I will be returning to Nepal with a good friend and his family to test and distribute his father's new invention, the Ganesha stove.
This stove burns efficiently, creating much heat with little fuel, and is very inexpensive to make. While there, we are going to volunteer doing anything the company his father is working with needs us to, from rebuilding to helping with healthcare to taking care of children.
My goal is to raise $5,000 to bring with me to Nepal to distribute to the people who need help rebuilding, putting their lives back together, and taking care of their family and their children. Nepal has given me so much, and now I want to give back. Although the initial destruction of the earthquake has been cleaned up, the people of Nepal still need our help, and help is waiting. They can't do it without us, so please help me on this journey to change lives and better the world.